Back in September, I was getting dinner with a friend, Johanna, who I hadn't seen since the spring. I asked Johanna, "How was your summer?" Now, she wasn't the first person I'd asked this question to. It was a standard conversation starter at that time of year, and it gets one of two responses. Either, "My summer was good," or "My summer was great." But Johanna looked at me and said, clearly a little nervous and with a slight frown on her face, "My summer was pretty terrible." I froze. I didn't know what to do. I sat in shock for a few seconds too long, getting ready to put on my supportive friend face before asking why. She explained that over the summer she had debilitating insomnia and anxiety. She told me how paralyzing it was and how powerless she felt. I looked at her, her face close to tears, and I said, "I feel like I'm looking at myself in the mirror." I felt as though Johanna was telling me my story about my problems with anxiety and insomnia. Her openness brought out something I had kept hidden, something only my parents knew. Because Johanna took off her mask, I saw myself in her rawness. Williams chaplain Rick Spalding defined spirituality as having something different on the inside than on the outside and recognizing this difference. Rick's definition is a beautiful one. Being spiritual is about recognizing that in some moments, perhaps in most moments, we show something different on the outside than we feel on the inside. It is rare that the two match up perfectly. If anything, most of the times when our inside matches our outside are happy moments. At a birthday party, or at a concert, or just watching a sitcom, you're enjoying yourself, and you're not afraid to show it. As the children's song goes, if you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. And most of us aren't afraid to clap. But rarely are we continuously happy. I would say most of the time there is some discrepancy between what we show on the outside and what we feel on the inside. So often we construct masks because we are afraid to be vulnerable. We are afraid to tell those around us, "I have insomnia," or "My summer was terrible." We construct facades that help us fit in, and these are typically facades of happiness and perfection. We don't want our classmates to know just how much we're struggling in multivariable calculus, or just how much that breakup is hurting us. We bury these feelings deep within us in order to blend in and become another fish in the sea. Last April, months before my dinner with Johanna, my grandfather passed away. I was devastated. I sat in my bed crying. I didn't know what to do. Needing to get off campus, I walked to the coffee shop. As I nursed a Tunnel City hot chocolate, acquaintances would come up to me and ask how I was, as they normally would. Mere hours before, I was sitting in my room crying. But now I was in a coffee shop where everyone was going about his or her life except me. As people would ask me how I was doing, I would tell them I was doing well. But this was a blatant lie. I wanted to say, "My day is pretty terrible." But I hid my sorrow under a facade of busy college student, a mask I was too good at wearing. As my day went on, keeping up this facade only led to more pain. It caused my interior to corrode, and my day ended just where it began, in my dark room, curled in a ball, crying. Now let me be honest with you. A coffee shop is neither the time nor the place to start crying in front of an acquaintance. And similarly, it's probably not appropriate in class to show how bored you are by falling asleep or checking your phone. Sometimes when you're in a coffee shop or in math class, a mask is good. Sometimes insincerity can be good. But the working definition of spirituality that I'm using is that spirituality is recognizing that you have a different outside than inside. We can be continually spiritual. We can continually recognize this difference without always remedying it. Simply realizing we are intentionally creating a facade is important. We can realize we're bored in math class without showing it. So often, though, we create protecting facades without realizing they are there, and we need others, like Johanna, to make this clear to us. One day, a few months before my dinner with Johanna, I was sitting in the student center reading a book. Someone, let's call him Andy, came up to me and said, "Are you pleasure reading?" And I laughed and I said, "I don't have time to pleasure read." And then without missing a beat, he said, "Well, if anyone has time to pleasure read, it'd be you." And after Andy walked away, I thought, what have I done? My life is far from perfect. I'm juggling 20 balls at once, almost losing my balance every time I catch one. But Andy doesn't see this. He only sees me in class, prepared to discuss and ready to take notes. He only sees me waving to people across campus. He only sees me in meetings contributing to discussions. And he doesn't see me on the phone with my mom, nearly in tears because I have too much to do. He doesn't see me lying in bed at 2 a.m., unable to sleep because I'm worried about getting everything done. He doesn't see me walking through Cole Field at night, saddened by the fact that sometimes I feel isolated with no one to turn to. When you look out on a pond full of ducks, you see them peacefully swimming. But what you don't see is the franticness of the ducks paddling, trying to stay afloat. I am a duck. We are all ducks. We put on facades of effortless perfection, but we aren't as calm as we want people to think we are. And until Andy asked me if a book was pleasure reading, I didn't realize I was being perceived as effortlessly perfect. I was contributing to the problem we so actively fight against. Nobody is effortlessly perfect. During that dinner with Johanna, I told her about how I've also struggled with insomnia. At first, she didn't believe me. She said she saw me as someone who had so much of his life under control. She couldn't imagine me having problems. At that moment, I realized if you can't take off your mask in front of your friends, then you can't take it off anywhere. And if you wear a mask all the time, when we look at ourselves in the mirror, we might forget what we look like. We need to find those times to take off our masks and show our inner selves. The Hebrew word for internal life is actually derived from the same root as the Hebrew word for face. So, according to Hebrew teaching, when we truly get to know someone face to face, we're seeing beyond the mask into what lies underneath. We're seeing who we really are. The power of my dinner with Johanna comes from a simple question. How was your summer? Or a variant of it we ask every day. How are you? So often, this question is meant simply as a greeting. When we ask someone we see in the coffee shop, we don't want to hear about his insomnia. We're just being courteous. We just want an answer of good or doing well. But then there are the times we ask a friend or a friend asks us, so, how are you? There's sincerity in the tone of the question. There's truthfulness. It's not simply a passing remark. The person asking, your friend, your parent, your mentor, wants to honestly know how you are. They ask because they can sense you're wearing a mask. They ask because they sincerely care about the inner you, not just the facade of you. This is a true "how are you?" It's the kind of "how are you" that we so often don't take the time to ask our friends, but it's also the "how are you" that we need to take the time to ask our friends. Because it's an opportunity for us, together, to support each other, to get to know each other, to be there for each other. It's the kind of "how are you" that made Johanna one of my closest friends at Williams. So when I told my mom I was giving this speech about spirituality, she kind of laughed. She's like a practicing Jew, going to services every week and like putting mezuzah on all our doors. You can ask my brother back there, he'll agree. And I'm like, without a doubt, the least religious person in my family. And for the longest time, I equated religiosity with spirituality. For my mom, spirituality is about believing in a higher power. But for me, it's about something deeply internal. It's about the fact that within all of us, there is a convoluted mixture of emotions and feelings, all contained in a human body covered in some skin. Everybody who looks at you just sees the skin. They just see the mask. What they don't see is that boiling, mixing stew of you inside. For my mom, God helps her understand this stew. But I turn to those around me. It's hard to figure out the ingredients by yourself. You need the guidance and wisdom of friends, of family, of mentors. That is why we need to be conscious of the fact that we are so often hiding ourselves behind a mask. We need to recognize that there's something going on within us. We need to find those times with the right people to open up. So, what's really happening behind your mask? How was your summer? How are you? Thank you.